about a little over 120, 130 hospitals.
And how many doctors are there in CloudPhysician who
today, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's we have over 30 doctors. It's a new way of providing care. Where within 2 weeks, we are able to convert this hospital ICU into a smart ICU and then help the patients there and provide them much better quality care.
So, welcome to Brains and Bangalore. I'm Dr. Praveen Kumar, and today we have Dr. Dhruv Joshi here, who is the founder and CEO of CloudPhysician. He himself is a MBBS graduate from St. John's Medical College, and he has done his internal medicine residency from United States and also fellowship in pulmonary medicine, if I'm right?
Pulmonary and critical care.
Pulmonary and critical care from the United States. So, yeah, we'll hand it over to Dr. Dhruv to just give us a short, brief introduction about himself.
Sure. No, great. Glad to be here and thanks for having me. So, very quickly, I am a physician, born and brought up in Bangalore. I did my early education, my MBBS here at St. John's, following which I moved to the US, did my residency in internal medicine at a Good Samaritan in Baltimore. Then I did my fellowship in pulmonary and critical care at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And that's also where I met the other co-founder of CloudPhysician, Dr. Dilip Raman, and I. We were colleagues at the Cleveland Clinic. And we decided to move back to India to start CloudPhysician. Goal was, how can we build a solution that would ensure that critical care and high quality critical care is accessible to a much larger number of patients than us just taking care of them in one hospital. And we realized that technology would be integral to that solution. And so how can we architect and build a solution and take it out and help as many critically ill patients as possible. So that's how the journey of CloudPhysician started. We also realized that India was a great place to get started. It would allow us the opportunity to build something from scratch and really be able to impact a very large number of patients. So that journey started 6 years ago, and since then, it's been a very, very interesting journey at CloudPhysician where we've grown as an organization and we've been able to impact many, many patients.
So, how was your journey through the St. John's? So, you did your MBBS from 2002 to 2007, if I'm...
No, 2001.
2001 to 2006?
Yeah.
Okay, so how was medicine back then, like MBBS back then, your life, your seniors?
St. John's was great. Not just from a medicine standpoint, but I think overall from a growth standpoint, I was fortunate to have gotten into St. John's, and I met a great set of people, not just the students, but even the teachers, and overall the environment was one that I really enjoyed. That having been said, there was, as at least for me personally, that entire journey of being in medicine, there was many times of a lot of disillusionment through that entire journey, and I very often questioned whether that was where I needed to be or that's what I wanted to do, and whether it was just some childhood fantasy that I've taken too far. So I certainly had that feeling, and I think that became even though I really enjoyed learning about learning medicine. I think physiology used to be one of my favorite subjects, and even medicine. So I really enjoyed that part of it. But I think the overall practice of medicine and the way that at least I saw how apprenticeship happens in India, postgraduate exams, and you cram and you do something and you get a seat and you do something. That was very disillusioning for me, and it did not seem like that was the direction that I wanted to go. And that was around the time that I decided that I will go to the US. And perhaps I will learn something new and maybe a different way in which medicine is taught and practiced and learned, and the entire system of the apprenticeship through residency. Perhaps that will give me an opportunity to learn something different than what I was seeing here, because I did not really like how I saw the entire medical education.
USMLE in itself is a quite rigorous exam process, which requires quite a bit of preparation. So,
and then I did that. I did that. I think, in terms of the process, perhaps that it was, again, you have to go through the examinations and you do your USMLEs, etc.
So once you entered United States, once you got into internal medicine after all the matching and everything, so how was your first few months, I would say, in the US? Did you find a stark difference between how the apprenticeship is happening over there, or did you, was your expectation versus reality?
I think the more than anything else, the exciting thing was so many new things. You see different things. You go through a residency, the way in which the way that the apprenticeship happens is different. So I would not say, I was blown away by what was happening. No, they were certainly not. But it definitely allowed me to see things differently and see new things and see, how to talk to patients differently, how to view something differently, how to work with the team slightly differently. I think those were the things that I liked, and so I would say that perhaps doing your post graduation in a busy government center in India, you would still perhaps have enormously more exposure to number of
patients, yes.
The number of patients, and so I think within the second year of residency itself, I had already secured a position to then do my fellowship. The residency, immediately after residency, it was
right.
I remember, I think I finished residency and the next week I started fellowship. You had this entire digitization that had begun in the US, where you had the entire movement from paper to electronic platforms, and then the early emergence of remote care and telemedicine, etc., that was emerging at that point in time, and somehow that was striking a chord with me, in the sense that it seemed like the practice of medicine perhaps needs to evolve to a different way of doing things, perhaps that would make it more equitable, more accessible, and available to much larger number of patients. And while I didn't have exactly what that answer would be, but it just seemed like the answer was somewhere in that.
And the ballpark,
in that zone.
In that zone, yes.
In that zone, you see this digitization happening. You see remote care happening. The hospital that I used to be at was setting up and connecting all these different ICUs, because all of their best talent and their best specialists were located in one of the hospitals, and they wanted to connect the other ones to that center. So all of this was happening, and it really piqued my curiosity. It sort of got the antenna up, and then I started looking around and talking to folks and going to conferences, trying to understand what's happening here. And I think at that time, when I had to either sign the dotted line accepting one of those jobs, or that I had, or doing something different, I realized that the answer lies somewhere in this zone, not in signing that.
But was it hard for you to give up that red carpet and come into some uncertainty? Because moving back to India and figuring out do it, or would it work or not, is also not sure. I mean, in that point of time. But so was that difficult for you to give that
up? No,
up?
it was not.
Okay.
Just like it was not difficult to decide that you want to do your USMLE and go, and even that, I think, was not. It was not difficult when I think about it. It was not difficult for me personally. I think around me, a lot of people were like, "Why are you doing that?"
I was going to come to that. How did your family react? Because
my family was actually very supportive, extremely supportive. They were like, "Yeah, you must do it." So I think from a family standpoint, I had enormous support. Even I would say from the people that knew me really well, they were like, yeah, you're perhaps onto something. So you go, do your thing, figure it out. whatever.
Don't worry about the red carpet.
So maybe the folks that didn't know me that well were like, why are you doing this? It seems a little bit risky. You don't even know what you're getting into, and are you sure you want to do this right now? And you work so hard to get to this point. And but for me personally, it was not hard.
Not hard. Right. And also considering the fact that, doctors in the United States were paid one of the highest in the world, in even in terms of compensation, no country comes close to that. Yeah. And the journey for the USMLE and then the residency and then the fellowship, which would all easily would have taken you like 7 years at least. I'm considering 3 plus 3 plus 1. I'm just So once you came back to India.
So just on that point, I did set up the things in such a way that when I moved back to India, I tied up with another firm that would allow me from India, to do some shifts for US hospitals for their nighttime, which was the daytime care. So a few days in the month, that's what I would do. It helped with the money.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
It sort of kept me connected to what's going on in the US, and I think most importantly, it sort of gave me an understanding of what it would take to build a solution of remote care, if that's what we needed. What works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's not good, what technology is good, what's not good. It certainly gave me that insight as well. So that sort of let me land here in India.
And also the fact that, if at all things didn't work out, you could always go back and do something. Did that comfort you in some way?
Yeah, I think I was, and I tell many doctors this, that as a doctor, job security is really
not a problem. I kind of feel luxurious for that, because I've hopped around so many things. I kind of feel, it's like, you always can walk into some place and make some decent money to live a decent life.
And it's the case with any place in the world. I don't think, for a doctor, job security is not a problem. And for me personally, I was US board certified in pulmonary critical care, internal medicine, had all my credentials.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't think that was a problem.
Right.
But more importantly, I did not want to make that, get into that comfort zone, or make that safety net the end goal. It was like, it's there. Sure, what's the worst that can happen?
Absolutely.
You become a pulmonary critical care doctor
in the United States. Yeah, that's the worst that could happen to you.
So it's not a bad thing.
Not so bad. Yeah, of course. The safety net was pretty strong and comfortable. Yeah. So now coming to the most exciting part of your life, at least I'm considering, CloudPhysician. So how was the initial months or years in building the technology for cloud? Firstly, finalizing the idea of CloudPhysician. Yeah. So I already kind of understand from what you said that you drew the inspiration from the United States, where you were they were trying to connect few hospitals for one hospital.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm assuming that you drew some kind of inspiration from there.
Yeah, certainly. Like I said, for me, it was like the answer is somewhere here. Mm-hmm. There are all of these things happening, and so we just need to figure out the answer. It's somewhere there. It's a little hazy. So after Dilip and I came back to India, we were doing some work with US hospitals, like I mentioned. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we started talking to a lot of hospitals in India, visiting a lot of hospitals in India, across the country. We visited so many. I remember we heard that there's one doctor trying to use some sort of a digital platform in Bhopal. We were like, let's go see what he's doing. And we landed up in Bhopal, and he was kind enough to, spend half a day with us. We were like, what are you doing? Etc. So we were trying to see what's happening, what are the problems. So we went to lots of hospitals. Of course, in Bangalore, because we were here. We went to Kerala a few times. We went to Bhopal. We went to other states, tier 2, tier 3. We went to Gulbarga, saw some hospitals. So we were doing this. We did this for a while, and we also saw that there were actually some other hospitals and hospital systems trying to do the same thing. So Fortis was trying to do the same thing. Apollo was trying to do the same thing. They were tying up with these large companies like GE and Philips to provide them the technology to do this. And we were very familiar with the technology platform. That's what we had used, for the US hospitals. And it was becoming increasingly clear to us that
you're coming closer to the point.
That's not going to work very well. We're going to have to build something better than what.
So the Fortis and Apollo, they were trying to imitate the American technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they were using
the same technology.
They were just using the same. Like Philips had some, stripped down version of what it was selling in the US. They put it here in.
Nothing customized to Indian requirements or Indian realities. Very different from this.
Nothing customized to Indian realities. I think it was clear to us that as we looked at those solutions, it just seemed like they were perhaps more architected for a North American hospital than an Indian hospital, and we did not think that would work here. And so then after doing this homework, which we were doing for a long time, we were like, let's just get started. Let's just do something. And so we managed to convince one hospital that, hey, you know what? Why don't we just do a pilot? No, we'll help you. You have some. That the hospital was in Mysore. They were having some challenges in their ICU. There was a very accomplished surgeon there who was from Tata Memorial. He was doing these surgeries, but had a problem with post-op care of his patients. Also couldn't do some of the more complex surgeries that he had been trained to do because he was not sure of what kind of support he would get. So we were like, can we just help you? So we spent some time in Mysore, worked with his nurses and doctors, just put in some very basic framework. We spent a few days in SP Road looking for some camera systems, because the cameras that we were using in the US were top end cameras, super expensive. Several $1,000s. Trying to put them here, it made no sense.
No financial sense, yeah.
Right. So then we were able to find some cameras that would work. We tested them, we put them there. Initially, there was no technology platform, so we were just we started off with using an Excel sheet. Okay. Then we realized that, since there were many people taking care of this patient and we wanted to input data, Excel was not, at least at that
best
time,
place, yeah.
It was not very well suited for collaboration. So we moved to Google Sheets.
But you still stuck to Sheets.
Right? So it was like, let's just get the job done. We need this patient data. We need it entered. We need it entered in this certain format. These are the fields that we want. Let's get somebody to put it in. Let's at least get this framework in place. So that's actually how we did it for that first hospital, and then we were available 24/7. We from Bangalore, we do rounds on those patients. We take care of the emergencies. We tell them what to do in the middle of the night. We help them troubleshoot issues, and they found it very helpful. We did this for about 3-4 months. At the end of which they were like, "Can you please continue doing this? This is super helpful."
And where did you find the help for building the technology? I know that Radar is the software that you built for this critical care, remote critical care. Where did you find the expertise and the help to build this technology? Considering both of you were doctors.
Yeah.
So who was the first person you went to? Like, how did you explain them what you were looking for, in terms of technology?
The guy who leads technology at CloudPhysician, his name is also Dhruv. He was a guy that I knew from the US. He used to work at Epic, which is a large electronic medical record company there.
EMR, okay.
Yeah, it's a large EMR company. He used to be in Madison, Wisconsin, and he used to build ICU modules amongst other things for Epic. He was there for about close to a decade, and he was moving back to India. And so I was like, as we were looking for people, I started talking to him. Through this entire process, my brother's a techie, so I'd always sort of lean on him for some questions and help us, if we want to interview a few guys, just help us do the interview so that we know that
this guy has got something he can help us in some way.
Yeah. Right. I mean, not so much from easy, but at least from a technical standpoint, somebody needs to do those checks. So I used to use my brother's help for that. But then Dhruv Sood was coming back, and so I started talking to him, and then Dilip and I started talking to him, saying that, hey, you know what, this is what we want to do at CloudPhysician. We want to build this technology-enabled
So now the startup ecosystem has matured pretty well in India, but back then 2017, probably only Flipkart, Myntra, these were the few companies that had come up, and the ecosystem was not so well matured as of now. The venture capital system was not well in place as it is today. So how was the CloudPhysician's initial day? Was it like completely bootstrapped or?
Yeah, it was completely bootstrapped. I think from what I remember, even back in those days, there was a lot of excitement and energy around startup ecosystem. I think even those days it was there. But in the early days, we just bootstrapped. Because we needed to figure out how it works, what works, how do we make it work, etc. We're taking care of ICU patients at the end of the day, right? So it's not just we didn't think that let's just go raise some money and then do something. It was rather, okay, let's just figure out how we can help 5 patients and maybe 10, maybe 15, what this technology solution look like, what the workflow will need to look like, doctors and nurses, how will they work, if we have them in a centralized care center, what that should look like. So I think the early years, that's what we spent doing. And so we never really went down that route of the venture capital or funding, etc. That happened later when we were confident that we had reached a stage.
You reached the product market fit,
and we knew, okay, what we need to do, what works. We built a solution, we built the technology. We already had hospitals that were benefiting, patients that were benefiting, and we were confident. At least we had like the early team that we needed, and at that point in time, we were like, okay,
now is the time.
How big? It's a question of now is the time or not is really a question of your mindset. Right. It never has to be the time. You can just continue doing that, and you just maybe a little bit smaller and
slower. Yeah.
Or you are looking at things at a much different scale and a much larger scale. At which point in time may require the support of that capital. And then I think that was a choice that Dilip and I had to make. And we made that choice. But it was much later. It was almost 4.5 years after we started.
So probably it was much easier for even the investors to, look at your company and see these guys have figured out a pretty major pieces.
Yeah. I think, when we started speaking to investors at that point in time, we had hospitals, we had a team of doctors, etc. We had a technology platform that was being used and adopted, etc. All of that was already in place. It was, much further ahead from just an idea or something on a piece of paper or the back of the envelope.
That would put the VCs at ease, because they know this is something that is working. All we have to do is infuse some capital so that they can scale faster.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something you'll have to ask the VCs whether it put them at ease or not. But I think there are different VCs for different stages of companies. Some like come in much earlier, some come in maybe. We were still early. Like, let's make no mistake, and we still are early.
So, what series are you at currently?
Series A.
Series A. So, from my experience working in FinHealth and SugarFed, one thing I've realized was it is not very easy to convince doctors to embrace technology. This is my opinion. You would have better insights, but I will come there. So my experience was that doctors are slightly averse, I feel, in embracing technology. They are like, things are working well the way they are. They're comfortable, anything new that comes in, they know that phase of friction that goes in before adapting to something new. So how was your experience in convincing hospitals to adapt CloudPhysician or, get in CloudPhysician in their ICUs?
Yeah, I think we never went with technology as a solution, right? Technology was always the enabler. You need to understand what is the problem statement that the hospital has. The problem statement is usually, and they will be very, forthright about it. Night time we have some issues. Sometimes our nursing quality is not up to the mark. Sometimes, the intensivists are not available all the time. Sometimes they're not available at all. So our patients we're not able to manage, very sick patients, we need to transfer them out, unfortunately, to other centers, and the outcomes are not ideal sometimes. So these are all the problems that they have, right? So I think we never went in to talk to these hospitals telling them that, hey, here's this fancy piece of technology that I have. It was rather, hey, these are your problems. Let us help you solve these problems, right? Let us provide you with access to these highly qualified doctors who will be available 24/7, who will work with your team. Let us help train your staff. Let us help get this data, especially at night time when you have problems. Let us be there available to solve this for you. Let us help you manage sicker patients because you need this expertise. We can help you with managing the ventilator or etc. And we'll do all of this in this manner, which has technology as part of it.
Right. So it was much, it was more about their problem and then your technology. It was more. I mean,
I would not say it was easy, or it was certainly not easy because when you first go, and even today it's not that easy. When you go to a new place and you talk to a new doctor or a new hospital and they've never heard about a solution like this, it does not even occur to them that this may be a solution.
They cannot comprehend how it works and will it work well?
Exactly. They cannot comprehend, like, what are you talking about? Like, I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, this is some outer space stuff that you're talking about. Your doctors are not here, my nurses are here, and my other doctors are here. You're telling me that you will solve my problems when you're not even here physically. That doesn't even make sense, right? So I think that that was definitely what most folks thought, and many of them still do that, right? So, but it certainly helps now that we have other hospitals to show.
And they also, I mean, one doctor in one hospital would easily be connected to some doctor in some other hospital. So their referral would be much more stronger than any outside of pitch. That would kind of make it slightly.
Absolutely.
So how many hospitals do you have in your portfolio currently?
We have about a little over 130 hospitals actually.
Wow. And how many doctors are there in CloudPhysician who
today, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's we have over 30 doctors.
30 doctors who manage these 120 hospitals. Fantastic. And what is your 5 years goal for 2028 goal?
We want to be in 10,000 hospitals. And why not? I think we should be in even more than that because the need for this is so enormous. And not just in India, but globally. Like, this was a problem that we were solving in the US, and people are still trying to solve there. And we're solving this in India and everywhere in between. And I believe that CloudPhysician has the potential to help all of these hospitals, and more importantly, help all of these patients that need access to better care.
Right, fantastic. I hope it goes that way, and I'm pretty sure, considering that there are already 125 hospitals in your portfolio, now it's all exponential more than linear. So, are there any existing competitors that that from other who have come up with something similar that are doing this?
Yeah, see, traditionally in India, in India, at least till a few years ago, our competition came from two ends of the spectrum. One was at the technology end, where you had the large MNC companies that make devices, also make software platforms.
GE, Philips, all of that.
Yeah, and at the other end you had the large corporate chains.
Yeah, hospital chains.
Hospital chains that would try to use a GE or Philips to do something similar to this. We were the one-stop shop for the solution. We're a virtual hospital. If you ever come to our office, you'll see that there are lots of doctors and nurses and developers, etc. And in our building, and
that would be a fantastic congregation, doctors and tech, software engineers in the same place,
in the same building, and no patients, right? The patients are everywhere else and across the country. and will be outside the country as well. So we're a virtual hospital in that sense, where we are sort of combining the technology along with the provision of these clinical services remotely. And that's what we do. We in fact we call the ICUs that we convert hospital ICUs into smart ICUs.
Smart ICUs, yeah.
Right? So they're smart ICUs. And it's a new way of providing care. It's a new way of providing care where within 2 weeks we are able to convert this hospital ICU into a smart ICU and then help the patients there and provide them much better quality care.
Fantastic. So now we spoke, good amount about CloudPhysician and how what was the origins of it, how did the technology was built, and how was the initial phase of convincing hospitals, and then how is currently, what are your 5-year plans, all of that. Now we'll kind of talk about little more general about healthcare.
Yeah.
So the AI is everywhere now. I mean, the generative AI has clearly helped in a lot of sectors. I personally feel you are a fantastic person to answer some questions about AI in healthcare, since you have been working in healthcare technology field for quite a while now. So what are your, let's say, expectations from AI? How, in what ways could AI help healthcare to make it better and more efficient?
Yeah. I mean, this is a long list of all the things, right? It's a wish list. Dhruv Joshi, who's the I told you about Dhruv Joshi, who leads our technology, right?
Yes.
For the last, I don't know how many years, I've been telling him that I need Jarvis.
Jarvis, yeah, I know. Iron Man.
Yes, the near sentient AI, companion of Iron Man, and I think that's what is. There are two things about Jarvis, and Dilip always tells me this. He's like, the as great as Jarvis may be, the most fun parts and the most impactful parts of Iron Man are when Tony Stark disagrees with Jarvis.
Yes.
You should think about it, right? Like Jarvis will be like, "Sir, it's too cold. Don't go that high." And he'll be like, "Yeah, no, I'm going because that's what I need to do to save the planet."
Yes.
And every time if you see the most impactful parts are when
of the movie, yes.
Actually,
when he overrided Jarvis's advice.
Tony Stark overrides Jarvis, and I think doctors in many ways should be the Tony Stark here, right?
Okay.
Doctors should be the Tony Stark.
But there are not enough Tony Starks, I feel, considering the number of people to be
think
saved.
Every doctor should be a Tony Stark, right? Every doctor should be a Tony Stark and use Jarvis as a tool for them to be better.
Them to be, let's say, treat 1,000 patients instead of 100 patients, or 10,000 patients instead of 1,000 patients. Yeah.
And overrule Jarvis when it needs to be overruled.
When it needs to be, absolutely.
Right? Because that final decision still lies with Tony Stark, and she will still lie with the doctor.
Absolutely.
So if the doctor understands the value system of the patient or the patient's family member, and should be able to make the right decision at the right time using this very, very powerful tool at their disposal, and that tool can help them be much better as a clinician, as a physician. It can help them be much more efficient, take care of a much larger number of patients, take care of patients in different locations where they perhaps can't physically be available all the time. So there's so much that it can do. And so, I mean, you're asking me about what can AI do. So I've sort of gone into a Marvel universe to tell you.
It's an accurate description of what AI could be doing. Yes.
And I strongly believe that that's the direction that it should go. We should use this very powerful tool to help us be better clinicians and help patients get better care.
And how far do you think are we from full-fledged diagnostic AI? So for the audience who will be listening, diagnostic AI is where you can input the symptoms and input the lab reports and ask the AI to recommend a treatment or recommend a plan of care. So how far do you think are we? How many years away are we from a full-fledged diagnostic AI that could? I know, of course, on the overview of a doctor, but at least the one which functions correctly 90% of the time or 95% of the time. Let's say. How many years away are we from?
I mean, I don't believe I have an answer for you in years. I just remember, Bill Gates has a quote where he says that we always overestimate what we will accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we will accomplish in 10. And I think that plays out quite often. I think, there's a lot of this obsession with this diagnostic AI and, everything will be done automatically, etc. Instead of fixating on that, I think we should just perhaps spend some more time on what it can actually help us with today. And it can help us with so much today, right? Just in terms of augmenting the workforce that we have, doctors and nurses, making them more efficient, optimizing how we do things, automating things for you. Even if everyone talks about this, getting the human out of the loop.
Let's first make them better and then probably think about getting them out.
Sure, we'll let's just do what we need to right now, which is just help the human who's in the loop be so much better.
Right. Just like how Tesla started with ADAS one, like where firstly partially auto self-driving, the cruise mode where you can sit and it'll drive in highways, and then they progress towards the completely self-driving. So you say we should kind of start progressing first, make the doctors efficient. Then if the technology permits, then you can kind of move towards a completely.
I think there's no point in us sort of jumping the gun here. I don't think we're there yet. And so, but there's so much to be done here, right? There's so much to be done with the human in the loop where we can really augment the human in the loop.
Instead of trying to completely get them out of the picture, which is kind of
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think, like I said, I mean, you have Jarvis, but Tony Stark's still there, right?
Right.
So can you just help Tony Stark become Iron Man?
And
just help the doctor become
Iron Doctor or Super Doctor.
Right. Whatever it is. Right. And I think we will do an enormous service to
the country,
to the patients wherever they may be, if we can do that.
Right. And towards the final phase of the conversation, in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned you really didn't enjoy how the apprenticeship of the postgraduates residency in India happens, and how the medical education in itself, the curriculum or how it is taught. You were not a big fan of it. You did mention it in the initial part of the conversation. So, what is your opinion on the medical education? Currently, like what do you think is lacking here, and what are your hypothetical changes that you would propose? Let's just hypothetically.
Oh, I think it is so antiquated, and just needs a complete overhaul. In my opinion, I think the world is moving too fast, and unfortunately for graduates of medical education, I feel like the system of education that they are in is just not moving at all. Or if it is, it's moving.
I have this line, for hospitals, not for medical education, where I say, hospitals today are the banks of 2000s. How inefficient and how crowded the banks used to be in 2000s. So you have to deposit money, you go to the bank. You have to withdraw the money, you go to the bank. You want to take a loan, you go to the bank. You want to put your check, you go to the bank. You go to the bank for everything. Yeah. The banks used to be crowded and stressed. The people were like just jam-packed all the time. And today the banks people are just chilling there because they have not much to do there. Everything is taken care of by online services. You take all of those transactions, the UPI and internet banking. So hospitals are probably still in that the phases of 2000 where the patient is coming there waiting for 3 hours to get an appointment, and they have like 3 minutes consultation with the doctor because the doctor can't spare more time because there are so many patients to be seen.
And I think colleges may be even further behind.
Yes.
I think that the job of any educational institution is to help the people that come through that institution be prepared and be very meaningful and active contributors to the world and to themselves as well. And I think that the world is moving very fast and it's changing, And I don't think that we're doing a service to all the people that go through medical education today in preparing them adequately to be those people that can meaningfully contribute to their potential. And I think that's a little disappointing, because I think there's so much potential, and I think that there is so much potential in healthcare, and I feel that whether it is doctors or nurses, etc., they can contribute so much to enhancing how healthcare is delivered. And I think that educational institutions have the opportunity to sort of create an impression at a time when people are impressionable, and if you can create the right impression, those people can really do great things. And I think we're losing an opportunity in not doing that, and not setting up people to become the best that they can in the field of medicine. I just to give you an example, I remember now at least there are a few more, but until a few years ago there were hardly any doctors who were starting healthcare startups.
Right. And now, no, like very few in entrepreneurship, like very, very few. Yes. You could like count on the fingers across the country, like how many do you have?
And yet you have so many healthcare startups. So somebody is seeing the problems in healthcare and wants to start something to solve those problems, but it's not the doctors, and you wonder why. Like these are the guys that know best what the problem is and would perhaps should know best what the solution may be.
Right.
Yet you've got like very smart people from IITs, IIMs, and all these other places who are like, hey, there's this problem in healthcare, let's go and figure it out. And they don't really have the domain expertise, but they're willing to still solve that problem, and they're thinking of problem solving at scale. And unfortunately, I don't feel enough, at least in India, I don't feel enough people from the medical profession are thinking that way, and we're still, we have some catching up to do. And I do feel that the medical education system can influence this, right? What you expose people to during that time, and how you teach them to think, and how you teach them to solve problems, and sort of, as opposed to just do as I tell you, and just create this hierarchical system. If you were to open people's minds to, and ask them to challenge the status quo, even if that person happens to be senior to you or your
that is a far-fetched dream, I assume, because I've recently graduated. I know the kind of cult that is there,
So isn't that unfortunate? Right?
It is pretty unfortunate.
I think that is I think it's imperative that we mold, or we don't mold, but we at least encourage people to challenge the status quo. And I feel that in the entire medical education system, you are told entirely the opposite. Don't challenge the status quo.
Never. You'll be whipped. You'll be punished, right? If you try to do anything against the grain.
Yeah, it is punitive, right? Anytime you even think about challenging the status quo, there's some punitive action, and I don't think that's a good system.
Right. And even like that, this was one of the big very awe moment for me, was that when I came out of medical school and then I entered a startup to work, the very system of seniors, juniors in the startup ecosystem compared to the hospital system, where the seniors consultants and the juniors are residents and interns, the kind of the fear that the people exhibit in the medical system, that when a superior comes in, that you have to be like nervous, you have to pretend to be nervous at least, only then he feels respected and all that. Whereas when you come to the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and even when I was working in Zolo, where the CEO was a doctor, it was pretty cool. Like, the CEO used to walk in, he used to be up to his work, nobody cared. They used to do their work. Only if the CEO wants someone, he'll call them, they'll have a conversation, and that's the end of it. Nobody's above the hierarchy is still there, but it is not as, evident and as visibly uncomfortable that it was in the hospitals when I was in the college. Yeah, and they seem to enjoy it. But anyways, and the final part, my personal question was that, doctors tend to make money very late in the life. their MBBS and then their residency and then their SR-ship, and then if they pursue a super specialty, it's collectively around the age of 30 is when they actually start making money. So how is it for the doctors? They're kind of making money not for themselves. They already have a family by the time they kind of start making money. How is it? Though it's considered, the doctors is considered a very safe profession. That's kind of well-paid profession. Do you think it's great for these guys who actually start making money at the age of 30? In that sense,
I think. I think in some ways that was also one of the reasons I wanted to move to the US. Because during your residency you get a stipend. You don't get a lot of money, but you get enough money to not be dependent on
your
family or have to pay fees, etc. And that was also a problem that I had at that point in time. And like I said, it's not like you get a lot of money, but you get enough money to be independent, and then money becomes less of a problem, right? So I think that I prefer that system where I was still in my mid-20s when I went to the US, and then I was independent financially. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was independent. I was not paying fees, etc., and could live a reasonably comfortable life. Not a luxurious life, but a
independent life.
Independent life, right? So I think that certainly then you can focus on other things that perhaps are more meaningful once that part is
figured out,
right? Which unfortunately, again, I thought that through the Indian system, you're sort of your PG, and then you're sort of still dependent, and then you figure out, and then money becomes like the only thing that's on your mind.
And doctors kind of get obsessed once they start making money because it's been so long that they were looking for.
Perhaps I don't know if that happens or not, but I can imagine that it may happen to some.
Right, then I think we'll have reached the end of the discussion. This was one hell of a discussion with Dr. Dhruv. He has been fantastic all through. His insights are pretty valuable. I hope a lot of people watch this and for their own benefit, and doctors especially, since like he mentioned, how very few doctors come into entrepreneurship who actually knows the problems of hospitals. They shy away from starting a healthcare technology startup. They are the most qualified to do it, but they shy away from doing it. So the problems remains still as a problem. So probably some of who you watch might turn into a healthcare technology entrepreneur, and I myself hope to turn into one. Thank you, Dr. Dhruv. Thank you for taking your time.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. A pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much.